The moment my name was skipped in that boardroom, I knew something had been taken from me. Not just a promotion, but years of late nights, quiet sacrifices, and loyalty that never made headlines. I sat there, hands folded, while applause filled the room for my sister. Her smile was polished, her confidence borrowed, and the role she accepted so proudly was built on work she had never done. Everyone assumed I was fine. The calm one, the supportive sibling. That was the version of me they liked because it never challenged them. Inside, something shifted. This was not the first time my sister had stepped ahead of me using my shadow. Growing up, she was always louder, quicker to take credit, better at turning attention into advantage. I was the opposite. I built quietly. I listened. I delivered results and walked away without asking for praise. In our family, that silence had always been mistaken for weakness. The promotion was supposed to change everything. It was promised after years of performance reviews that spoke for themselves. I had emails, metrics, and client feedback to prove it. But promises mean nothing when ambition runs in the family. After the meeting, my manager avoided eye contact. My sister hugged me too tightly and whispered something about how things just worked out. I smiled back. That smile convinced everyone the story was over. It was only beginning. I did not confront anyone. I did not argue. I did not expose what I knew. Instead, I made a decision that felt dangerous in its calmness. I would let her have the title. That choice confused people. They expected anger. They expected drama. What they did not expect was strategy. While my sister stepped into visibility, I stepped into something far more powerful: access, information, leverage. The company was changing. Mergers were being discussed quietly. Leadership cracks were forming behind closed doors. And I was suddenly free to move without being watched. They thought I had lost. What they did not realize was that sometimes the smartest move is letting someone win the wrong prize, and by the time they understood what I was building in the background, the promotion would be the smallest thing my sister had taken from me. The real loss was still coming. The days after the promotion felt strangely quiet, like the pause before something breaks. My sister walked through the office with a new confidence, one that demanded attention. People congratulated her, asked for her vision, treated her like the future of the department. She absorbed it all easily, never questioning how quickly the spotlight had shifted. I stayed where I was, exactly where they expected me to be, with my sister distracted by meetings and visibility. Her old responsibilities quietly fell back into my hands. Client follow-ups, process reviews, crisis control. The unglamorous work that actually kept the company running. Management thanked me for being reliable. They did not realize reliability was turning into reach. I started seeing patterns others missed. Budgets stretched too thin. Contracts renewed without proper review. Decisions approved for speed, not stability. The higher my sister climbed, the less she understood what was happening beneath her. At home, the dynamic shifted too. My parents praised her endlessly. They spoke about her success like it was proof that the family was finally winning. They told me I should learn from her confidence. I nodded, played my role, and listened carefully. Listening became my advantage. Late nights turned into strategy sessions. I documented everything. Timelines, emails, numbers that did not align. I noticed how often my sister forwarded work without reading it. How she trusted titles more than truth. How she assumed the system would protect her because it always had. A senior client called me directly, bypassing my sister completely. They were concerned, confused, unhappy. I solved the issue quietly, efficiently, without escalating. The relief in their voice told me something important. Trust was still mine. From that moment, people began coming to me again, quietly, carefully. Not for permission, but for clarity. I never corrected them. I never reminded them of titles. I simply delivered results. Meanwhile, pressure began to show on my sister. She worked longer hours, but achieved less. Her confidence started to crack in small, invisible ways. Mistakes piled up where no one was looking, and I watched it all with patience, because I was no longer chasing a role. I was positioning myself for control. They thought the story was about a stolen promotion. They had no idea it was becoming about ownership, power, and the cost of taking credit for someone else's work. And soon, that cost would be impossible to hide. Pressure has a way of revealing what confidence tries to hide. As weeks passed, my sister's calendar filled with meetings, but progress slowed. She spoke often and listened less. Decisions were rushed. Follow-ups were forgotten. The promotion that looked powerful from the outside was quietly exposing her limits. I stayed steady. People began stopping by my desk again, not openly, but with small questions that carried bigger meaning. They wanted reassurance. They wanted answers they were not getting from leadership. I gave them facts, solutions, and direction without ever stepping outside my role. That restraint mattered. Behind the scenes, leadership discussions grew tense. Targets were being missed. Client satisfaction dipped. Everyone searched for reasons without questioning the obvious. Titles had changed. Capability had not. Numbers were presented that looked impressive at first glance. I recognized them instantly. They were projections I had created months earlier, now framed as completed success. I said nothing. Silence is dangerous when it is misunderstood. After the meeting, a director pulled me aside. They asked how those projections had translated into real outcomes so quickly. I answered honestly, calmly explaining what was achievable and what had not yet happened. The room went quiet. That conversation did not end there. Suddenly, I was being invited into rooms I was not supposed to enter anymore. Not officially. Discreetly. The company was preparing for something bigger. A restructuring. Potential investors. Leadership alignment was being questioned, and my sister was being evaluated. At home, tension crept in. She grew defensive. Conversations turned sharp. She accused me of being distant, of not supporting her enough. I listened, nodded, and continued taking notes in my head. Support does not mean silence when truth is at stake. An internal audit was announced. It was not public yet. Only a few people knew. Processes, approvals, performance data would all be reviewed. I knew exactly what they would find, not because I had set a trap, but because I had documented everything, every time I had fixed an issue without credit. Every time my sister had approved something she did not understand. Every time the company relied on me while celebrating her. I did not rush. I did not panic. I waited. Because when systems finally look closely, they do not ask who sounds confident. They ask who actually knows what they are doing. And I was ready for that moment. The audit changed the air in the building. Conversations dropped in volume. Smiles became calculated. Every department suddenly cared about documentation, timelines, and accountability. The same details that had once been ignored were now under a microscope. I did not change my behavior. That consistency made me invisible in the best way. My sister, on the other hand, became restless. She stayed late, sent emails at odd hours, and asked questions that revealed how little she understood about systems she had approved weeks earlier. Confidence turned into urgency, and urgency turned into mistakes. People noticed. One afternoon, a senior executive asked me to walk them through a process my sister had signed off on. I explained it step by step, including the risks that had never been addressed. The executive listened closely, then asked a single question that cut deep. Why was this not flagged earlier? I answered without accusation. I explained where communication had failed and where assumptions had replaced verification. I did not mention my sister by name. That restraint mattered more than blame ever could. The audit team began requesting records directly from me. It started with small things. Reports. Timelines. Then it escalated into deeper reviews. I provided everything cleanly, clearly, and without hesitation. The more data I shared, the more leadership realized something uncomfortable. The department had been running on my backbone long before the promotion. Titles had changed, but dependency had not. At home, my sister unraveled. She complained about pressure, about unrealistic expectations, about how leadership had set her up to fail. Our parents sided with her instantly. They blamed the company. They blamed politics. They blamed everyone except the truth standing quietly in the room. I let them, because the truth was moving on its own timeline now. Late one evening, I received a message asking if I would consider stepping into a temporary advisory role during the audit. Not a promotion. Not yet. Something quieter. More powerful. Access without exposure. I accepted. That decision placed me at the center of everything. Strategy meetings. Risk discussions. Investor concerns. I listened more than I spoke, absorbing the full scope of what was coming, and what was coming would not end with a simple correction. It would end with a transfer of trust. My sister still believed this was a rough phase. She had no idea the ground beneath her title was already gone, and when leadership finally decided who could carry the company forward, the answer would not be the person who asked for power. It would be the one who had been holding it all along. The advisory role changed everything without changing anything on the surface. I still sat at the same desk. I still carried the same title. But behind closed doors, my voice began shaping decisions that would define the company's future. That contrast was intentional. Leadership wanted stability, not drama. They wanted someone who understood the system deeply but did not crave attention. I fit that need perfectly. Every meeting confirmed what the audit had already suggested. I was not just capable. I was essential. Meanwhile, the pressure on my sister intensified. The audit findings were not yet public, but consequences had begun. Her projects were paused. Approvals required extra layers of review. Invitations to key meetings quietly disappeared. She noticed, even if she did not fully understand why. Curiosity turned into paranoia. At home, she accused me of benefiting from her struggle. She said I was taking advantage of timing. I listened without reacting. Emotional reactions only weaken positions that need clarity. Leadership asked me to prepare a contingency plan. Not just for the department, but for executive continuity. That request carried a weight no title ever could. I worked nights assembling frameworks, outlining risks, and presenting options that protected the company regardless of who remained in charge. The feedback was immediate and decisive. This is what we have been missing, the audit concluded shortly after. The results were delivered in a closed session. No public blame. No spectacle. Just conclusions drawn from facts. Decisions made based on evidence. My sister was placed on leave pending review. The announcement was brief, professional, final enough to shift the power dynamic permanently. Shock rippled through the office. People whispered. Questions circulated. No one came to me directly, but glances lingered longer than before. At home, the fallout was explosive. My parents demanded explanations. They insisted the company was unfair. They asked why I had not defended my sister more aggressively. I told them the truth. I had defended the work. Silence followed, because defending work is different from defending entitlement. Leadership moved quickly after that. Investors needed reassurance. Clients needed continuity. The company needed someone it could trust immediately, and they already knew who that was. I did not celebrate. I prepared. Because the story was no longer about a stolen promotion. It was about what happens when borrowed success collapses and real contribution finally steps into the light, and the final decision was closer than anyone realized. The company did not announce a replacement immediately. That pause was intentional. Silence creates space for truth to surface, and leadership wanted to see who could carry weight without a title pushing them forward. That person was already working. I was asked to step in temporarily, quietly, as an interim stabilizer. No celebration. No office-wide email. Just responsibility layered onto responsibility. I accepted without hesitation. From that moment, everything accelerated. Clients who had gone quiet returned. Issues that had stalled were resolved within days. Departments that had been confused suddenly had direction. The results spoke faster than any explanation ever could. Investor meetings began. I was in the room now, presenting plans my sister had once taken credit for, but this time with execution behind them. Questions came sharp. Answers came cleaner. Confidence returned to faces that had been uncertain for months. Trust rebuilt itself quickly when competence led the conversation. My sister watched it all from the outside. Her leave extended, then extended again. Each delay was louder than an announcement. The company was moving forward without her, and it was doing better than it had in years. At home, the shift became unavoidable. My parents stopped praising. They started asking. Subtle questions at first, then direct ones. They wanted to know how involved I was, what my role really looked like. I did not exaggerate. I did not downplay. I told them exactly what I was doing. That truth unsettled them more than silence ever had. A legal letter arrived. Not dramatic, just precise. My sister's role was officially under review for misrepresentation of performance and decision authority. The same authority she had claimed so proudly now demanded accountability. She broke down that night. For the first time, she admitted she had taken shortcuts. That she had assumed the promotion would protect her. That she believed I would always be there to clean up quietly. I listened, and I said nothing, because this was not about punishing her with words. It was about letting reality speak. The company scheduled a final decision meeting. Leadership wanted continuity, not chaos. They wanted someone who could lead without ego and repair without resentment. They already had the answer, and when the call came asking me if I was ready to step fully into the role that had once been taken from me, I did not hesitate, because this time, it was not being offered. It was being handed back, with everything else attached. The final meeting was scheduled for a Monday morning, the kind that quietly decides futures before most people finish their coffee. I arrived early, not out of nerves, but habit. Preparation had carried me this far, and I was not about to abandon it now. The room filled slowly. Executives, legal, human resources. Faces I had seen confident, worried, uncertain, all now focused. This was no longer about family, feelings, or fairness. It was about outcomes. The review began with facts, performance data, client retention, revenue stabilization, risk mitigation. Every chart pointed in the same direction. The department had recovered under my leadership, even without an official title. The numbers did not flatter. They testified. Then came my sister's portion, not accusations, just records, missed approvals, delegated decisions without oversight, work credited that had never passed through her hands. The room stayed quiet, not out of sympathy, but professionalism. That silence was heavier than judgment. I did not speak during her review. I was not asked to. My presence alone told the story. Leadership understood now what they had overlooked before. Visibility had misled them. Substance had been quietly working beneath it. The decision followed without drama. The role was mine, permanent, fully authorized. No conditions. No probation. What surprised me was not the outcome, but the relief I felt. Not triumph. Not revenge. Relief that the truth no longer had to hide behind patience. At home, the shift was irreversible. My parents struggled to reconcile the story they had believed with the reality in front of them. My sister withdrew, no longer angry, just exposed. She had lost more than a job. She had lost the illusion that she was untouchable. I did not celebrate publicly. I did not gloat privately. Instead, I focused on building something better than what had existed before. I restructured teams. I rewarded quiet contributors. I removed systems that favored noise over results. The company began to change its culture. So did my family. They started speaking to me differently. Carefully. Respectfully. As if afraid to misjudge me again. That caution felt earned, but also unnecessary, because the real revenge was never about taking something from my sister. It was about taking back everything that had been denied to me. And the final reckoning was still one step away, the step where I would decide how much access they deserved to the life I had rebuilt without them. The weeks after the decision were quieter than I expected. No celebration. No dramatic fallout. Just a steady return to balance, both at work and at home. The kind of calm that only arrives after a storm has passed and nothing false is left standing. I stepped fully into the role I had earned. Not the version that existed on paper years ago, but something stronger. Leadership rooted in accountability. Systems built on merit. People noticed the difference quickly. Performance improved. Trust deepened. The company stopped feeling like a competition and started feeling like a structure that could last. My sister eventually returned, not to leadership, but to a position that matched her actual strengths. She avoided my eyes at first. Then one evening, she asked to talk. Not to argue. Not to justify. To acknowledge. She admitted she had mistaken opportunity for entitlement. That she had assumed family would always cover the gaps. That she had taken my silence as permission. I listened. I accepted the honesty. I did not offer excuses or apologies on her behalf. Growth requires ownership, not protection. At home, my parents changed too. Slowly. Awkwardly. They stopped comparing. They stopped projecting. They learned that success does not always announce itself loudly and that overlooking quiet strength carries consequences. The revenge was never loud. It did not involve humiliation or revenge speeches. It was structural. I took everything else. The influence. The trust. The authority. The future. I let my sister keep the memory of the promotion she once stole. Because in the end, it was the smallest thing she ever took from me. What I gained was far greater. I reclaimed my work. My reputation. My place, and the most satisfying part was this. I never had to ask for it back. The system returned it to me on its own terms. If you are watching this, tell me where you are watching from and what time it is on your side, because somewhere right now, someone is being underestimated, and this is what happens when they stop waiting for permission.